China, the cradle of world civilization. A land that gave humanity printing, paper, and gunpowder. Dynasty after dynasty, it stood as the heart of a vast empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the Himalayas, and from the eastern steppes to the tropical South China Sea. The Chinese call their country Zhongguo, the Middle Kingdom or Central State. For more than 2,000 years, emperors have claimed to rule by the mandate of heaven over Tianxia, all under heaven. Since 1644, this great empire has been ruled by the Qing Dynasty. Its founders, the Manchus from the north, governed a realm where the majority of subjects were Han Chinese. By the 19th century, the Qing Empire spanned over 14.5 million square kilometers, receiving tribute from many neighboring lands. Within these borders lived about 450 million people, roughly a third of the world's population. It was said that China also possessed a third of the world's wealth. The imperial capital Beijing, along with major cities such as Nanjing and Canton, ranked among the greatest cities on Earth. This was a multi-ethnic empire whose declared goal was not economic or political expansion, but the preservation of harmony, a concept rooted in the teachings of Confucius, the sage of the 6th century BCE. For 2 millennia, his philosophy guided both public and private life. Its core values, filial piety, loyalty, and benevolence, were meant to maintain order and harmony. But this society was deeply conservative. Young men from wealthy families spent years studying Confucian classics, preparing for the only path into the upper echelons of Qing administration, the Imperial Civil Service examination. Yet the empire, ruled by scholar bureaucrats and an emperor, both revered and feared, failed to keep pace with the rapidly changing modern world. For now, foreign traders were confined to the southern port of Canton, but such splendid isolation could not last. The year 1839 marked the beginning of China's century of humiliation. For many years, British merchants had smuggled opium from India into China, an immensely profitable trade. The result for China was a devastating epidemic of addiction. When Qing officials in Canton confiscated and destroyed massive quantities of the drug, Britain responded with force. With superior naval technology, the British swiftly crushed the outdated Chinese fleet. China was forced to sign the Treaty of Nanking, the first of the so-called unequal treaties. It granted Britain special privileges, opened 5 ports to trade, and ceded the territory of Hong Kong. A second Opium War soon extended similar privileges to France and the United States. The Russian Empire, seizing the moment, annexed lands in China's northeast. Meanwhile, a terrible civil war, the Taiping Rebellion, ravaged southern and central China for 14 years. An estimated 40 million people perished, making it one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history. While China suffered, its rivals grew stronger. In 1895, recently modernized Japan, long considered inferior to China, defeated the Qing Navy with ease and secured its own territorial gains. Western powers mocked China as the sick man of Asia, a giant brought low by imperialism and unable to adapt to the modern age. Yet as the 20th century approached, a growing sense of outrage and determination stirred within Chinese society. In 1899, in northern China, a movement arose calling itself the Society of Righteous and Harmonious Fists. Its members soon became known to foreigners as the Boxers. They were enraged by the Qing Dynasty's weakness, the spread of Christianity, and China's many humiliations. Their goal: to expel all foreigners and end the nation's shameful concessions. The Boxers began by attacking Western-built railways, Christian missionaries, and Chinese converts. In June 1900, thousands of Boxers marched into Beijing, laying siege to the foreign quarter. Their slogan, Support the Qing. Exterminate the foreigners. For the ruling Empress Dowager Cixi, the Boxers were both a problem and an opportunity. She decided to support them with Qing imperial forces and declared war on the foreign powers. It was a disastrous mistake. In response, an Allied expeditionary force of 20,000 soldiers from 8 nations landed and marched on Beijing. The uprising, marked by brutal atrocities on all sides, was crushed. Beijing was looted by the foreign troops. The Qing court was forced to sign the Boxer Protocol, which imposed crushing indemnities. Payments nearly doubled the empire's annual revenue, to be paid over 40 years. It was the greatest humiliation in China's long history. Under immense pressure, Empress Cixi and her court finally initiated major reforms. The archaic civil service exams were abolished, replaced by modern schools based on Western curricula. Steps were taken toward drafting a constitution to limit imperial power. The army was reorganized along Western lines, improving officer training, supply systems, and weaponry. Its most capable force became the Beiyang Army in the north, commanded by General Yuan Shikai. Yet many believed these measures were too little, too late, and that only a revolution could save China. One of those revolutionaries was Sun Yat-sen. Born into a modest Cantonese family, Sun was educated in Hawaii. He was nothing like the old Confucian elite, a Christian, fluent in English, and barely conversant in classical Chinese. After taking part in several failed uprisings against the Qing, Sun lived in exile in Europe. In 1905, he arrived in Japan and founded in Tokyo the Tongmenghui, the Revolutionary Alliance, whose goal was to overthrow Manchu rule and replace the Qing monarchy with a democratic republic. He promoted 3 principles of the people: nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood. To his followers, Sun Yat-sen embodied hope for a new future, and that future seemed near. In 1908, after 47 turbulent years on the throne, Empress Dowager Cixi died at age 72. The imperial crown passed to a 2-year-old boy, Puyi. At a moment of deep crisis and growing unrest, the Qing Dynasty was weaker than ever. October 9, 1911, Hankou, Hubei Province. Members of a secret revolutionary society linked to the Tongmenghui were manufacturing bombs when one accidentally exploded. The plot was exposed. Several leaders were arrested and later executed. But instead of fear, the event sparked rebellion. In nearby Wuchang, soldiers of the new army mutinied. After 24 hours of fierce fighting that claimed hundreds of lives, Wuchang fell to the revolutionaries. On October 12th, a new military government was proclaimed in the province. It denounced the crimes of the Qing Dynasty and called on other provinces to join the uprising. The revolution spread like wildfire, especially in cities and towns, where resentment against Manchu rule ran deep. Within 6 weeks, 16 of China's 26 provinces declared independence from the emperor. In many areas, such as Shanxi, Manchus became targets of brutal reprisals. Panic gripped the Qing court in Beijing. General Yuan Shikai was recalled to suppress the revolt with the Beiyang army. Soon, the country descended into open civil war between Yuan's northern forces and the southern revolutionaries. Amid the chaos, Tibet and Outer Mongolia declared independence. On January 1, 1912, in Nanjing, the revolutionaries proclaimed the founding of the Republic of China. Sun Yat-sen, newly returned from the United States, was sworn in as provisional president. After years of exile, fundraising, and failed conspiracies, Sun finally held political power. His government immediately began drafting a democratic constitution and implementing sweeping reforms. Ancient practices were abolished. The wearing of the queue, a long braided ponytail symbolizing subservience to the Manchus, the binding of women's feet, and the ritual kowtow. In the new multi-ethnic Republic of China, all would be equal. Its flag bore 5 colors, symbolizing the union of 5 races: Han Chinese, Manchus, Mongols, Muslims, and Tibetans. Yet the Republic controlled only the southern half of the country, and its victory remained uncertain. To unify China and secure peace, Sun made an unexpected proposal to Yuan Shikai. If Yuan persuaded the Qing imperial family to abdicate, he would become president. Yuan agreed, warning the dynasty that only abdication would guarantee their safety and comfort. On February 12, 1912, the 6-year-old Emperor Puyi abdicated the throne, though he and the court were allowed to remain in the Forbidden City. More than 2,000 years of imperial rule in China had come to an end. In its place stood Asia's first great republic. 3 days later, General Yuan Shikai became the provisional president of the Republic of China. But almost immediately, the revolutionaries clashed with their new leader, whose personal ambitions were all too obvious. Placed in opposition, Sun Yat-sen and his followers founded the Kuomintang Nationalist Party, continuing the mission of the Tongmenghui. By the end of the year, China held its first national democratic elections, though only about 5% of the population was allowed to vote. The Kuomintang won a decisive victory, securing nearly half the seats in the National Assembly. Its leader, Song Jiaoren, a close ally of Sun, was almost certain to become prime minister. On March 20, 1913, as he boarded a train in Shanghai, he was shot twice at close range. Circumstantial evidence pointed to President Yuan as the mastermind, though no direct proof was ever found. China's first democratic elections would also be its last. The following year, tensions between the Kuomintang and Yuan's government would once again erupt into armed conflict.